The house had always sounded different after silence settled in. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that listens back. There's a low hum in the walls tonight, like it remembers every word that was thrown here, every slammed door, every argument disguised as concern. Someone once said love in this family was conditional, though nobody had the courage to finish that sentence. The scent of old carpet, the faint metallic taste of rain slipping through a cracked window, they seemed to carry the echo of a bark that shouldn't matter anymore. It was just a dog, someone had whispered once, but nothing about the silence that followed felt small. Tonight, the lawyer's voice will slice through it all, steady and cruelly calm, reading out the last words of a man who knew how to turn affection into inheritance. And somewhere, beneath the tremor of thunder, there's still that distant sound, claws on hardwood, reminding everyone that loyalty isn't measured in blood. The words hang in the air longer than they should, the kind of legal phrasing that turns affection into arithmetic. Each sentence weighs differently, heavy where it shouldn't be, too light where the truth hides. There's no sound but the scratching of Harold's voice against the storm. What once was laughter in this room now exists only in the echo of that dog's bark, the one moment of warmth everyone had in common. But warmth was never sustainable here. It needed ownership. And when the will names what belongs to whom, it feels less like legacy and more like punishment wrapped in inheritance paper. Someone coughs, someone sighs, but no one moves. The air itself seems bound by contract, and the ghost of loyalty lies obedient at their feet, waiting to see who will speak first. There are moments when silence becomes declaration, and this is one of them. The lawyer clears his throat, but it's unnecessary. Everyone already heard the words that mattered. The house, the stocks, the art collection, all left untouched for them. But the estate's heart, the one parcel of land where Benny's ashes rest, isn't theirs. It's hers. The daughter they disown. There's a tremor of disbelief that feels more like fury. Evelyn's lips part, but no words form. Charles reaches for his glass, but doesn't drink. The lawyer folds his paper with reverence, as though the dead man's command still breathes between them. Somewhere the wind pushes harder against the glass, like it wants in or out. It's almost cruel how grief can masquerade as pride. She remembers the day they said she wasn't welcome. That loyalty to a mutt over blood was betrayal, but the truth was simpler. She had chosen something that loved without condition, and they couldn't forgive her for it. Now, with the will laid bare, the word trust means something else entirely. Not a virtue, but a legal mechanism. The storm outside sharpens, wind howling through the eaves like a warning. The lawyer excuses himself, but no one notices. In the silence he leaves, every breath feels like an accusation. When the storm finally breaks, it leaves the air raw, as though the house itself has exhaled. She stands by the window, hand on the glass, and for a heartbeat, she swears she sees him. The golden shape of memory bounding through the garden, tail high, eyes bright. Then lightning flashes and he's gone, just the rain carving his path. Behind her, her parents argue in broken whispers, voices splintered with disbelief and loss. There's no victory here, only reckoning. In the will's aftermath, the dog's ghost remains the most loyal presence in the room. And as dawn begins to crawl across the soaked landscape, she knows this was never about inheritance at all. It was about what love costs when it's measured in ownership. Morning arrives unwillingly, dragging the night's residue through the curtains like a stain that won't fade. No one has slept. The coffee tastes metallic, the air still damp with unspoken blame. Every movement feels rehearsed, a family playing at civility long past the closing act. She watches them from across the table, seeing not her parents, but strangers bound by paperwork and fear. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaks, the sound of absence moving through old timber. She remembers when Benny used to fill those spaces with warmth, with purpose. Now, the only pulse in the room is tension, slow and deliberate. They've always been better at withholding than giving. The will didn't divide them. It revealed what was already carved in silence. It begins with the smallest question, the kind that sounds harmless but lands like an accusation. What exactly did he mean by custodial rights? Evelyn asks, tone too even to be calm. Harold isn't here to translate the legal language, but she already knows the answer. And so does Lena. The land, the ashes, the garden. They're hers now, legally, irrevocably. But law can't restrain guilt, and guilt has its own inheritance. The word, rights, hangs between them like a dare. Lena's voice, when it comes, isn't defiant. It's weary. He trusted me to take care of what he loved. That should end it. But Charles' hand slams the table before the silence can settle. The sound as sharp as a gavel. The memory rises before anyone speaks. That day, that argument, that moment she chose to walk out. Benny had been sick then, and her father had said no more vet bills, no more emotional indulgence. She'd taken the dog and left without looking back. That was the last time they spoke until the call about the funeral. It's strange how death rearranges memory, how it edits cruelty into reason and reason into regret. Evelyn starts to cry, softly, the sound brittle as glass. Charles looks away, eyes fixed on a crack in the wall that's been there for years. He'd rather stare at the damage he understands. Lena grips her mug, the tremor in her hand giving away what pride hides. By afternoon, the rain stops. The quiet that follows feels heavier than the storm itself. They walk the property in uneasy procession. The garden still damp, the air metallic with the scent of earth. It was here that Benny was buried, beneath the apple tree that never bore fruit again. The soil is dark, clotted with leaves. Lena kneels without speaking, brushing mud from the plaque her father installed years ago. Beloved companion. It reads, simple and final. Behind her, Evelyn's breath catches, not from grief but from something closer to realization that the will's cruelty wasn't in its division, but in its truth. The man they all loved trusted the one they couldn't. Evening comes quietly, without apology. Inside, the light stayed dim, as though brightness would feel dishonest. Lena packs a small bag. Not because she's leaving for good, but because staying any longer would unmake what little peace the day gave her. Her mother stands in the doorway, neither stopping her nor helping. Charles lingers by the fireplace, staring into ash that still smells faintly of smoke. Before stepping out, Lena places Benny's collar beside the urn, fingers resting there a moment too long. It's the first time in years they share the same silence, not in anger, but in surrender. Outside, night gathers like a curtain, readying the stage for what comes next. The morning after departure always feels heavier than the leaving itself. The house groans as if settling into a new order, one shaped by the absence of words unsaid. Evelyn wanders through rooms that no longer recognize her authority, touching frames, rearranging nothing. Charles sits in his study, the scent of whiskey and cedar lingering like confession. Somewhere between the silence and the ticking clock, memory starts to rewrite itself, not with accuracy but with need. He'd kept something from them both, a letter, sealed and marked for delivery only after. It lies now in the lawyer's hands, waiting to unravel the story beneath the inheritance. The dog was never just a pet. The dog was the secret. The phone call comes just past noon. Harold's voice careful, rehearsed. He's found something that changes the will's meaning. There's an addendum, he says. It was attached to the estate deed. Evelyn's fingers tighten around the receiver. The line hums between them, a living thing. He mentioned the dog by name. Harold adds, quieter now, and a trust that wasn't meant for money. Her breath catches, but she doesn't tell Charles. Not yet. Instead, she drives the old road toward town, the one lined with birch trees that used to shimmer like promises. The world outside feels too alive for secrets this cold. The law office feels colder than before, though the same fluorescent light hums overhead. Harold greets her with the restraint of a man accustomed to grief, wrapped in formality. He lays out the letter like evidence. The handwriting is unmistakable. Her husband's. The same looping script that once wrote love notes on birthday cards. But this one begins differently. To the one who kept our secret. Her hands tremble as she reads. The truth blooms slowly, painfully. Benny hadn't been adopted. He'd been found. A roadside accident. A child's cry. A bargain made in desperation. The dog had belonged to someone else once. Someone who never came back. And Charles had promised to care for it. To keep that promise quiet. Evening finds her back at the house. The letter folded neatly in her pocket. The truth burns quieter than betrayal. But it burns still. She finds Charles in the study, asleep in his chair, the glass of whiskey untouched beside him. She watches him. The man who built their life on control, now small beneath the weight of what he hid. When he stirs, she doesn't ask why. She already knows. The promise had been more than guilt. It had been love disguised as penance. He left the dog to her. Evelyn murmurs, voice trembling, because she was the only one who ever forgave him. His silence confirms everything. Some sins, it seems, inherit themselves. Night again. Lena returns without calling, drawn by something she can't name. The air inside feels changed, less combative, more brittle like aftermath. She finds them in the study, both awake now, both older somehow. Evelyn hands her the letter without preamble. No speeches, no explanations. Lena reads silently, lips parting slightly at the final line. Forgive me for what I couldn't give her. The three stand in the quiet, bound not by inheritance but by shared undoing. Outside, the moonlight spills through the glass, silvering the urn, the collar, and the family who once believed love could be legislated. Morning leaks into the house like a slow confession. No one speaks during breakfast. Even the cutlery seems hesitant to touch porcelain. The letter sits on the counter, folded neatly, impossible to ignore. There's a shared quiet understanding now. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a soft surrender to the truth that none of them were who they thought they were. The dog had been a promise, a burden, a witness to their fail. And Lena, standing in the same kitchen where her mother once told her to leave, realizes she doesn't feel vindicated. She feels tired. Tired of carrying what wasn't hers alone. Her father's eyes flicker toward her, searching for something she hasn't decided to give. Outside, the storm has passed, but its memory lingers in the slick sheen of the driveway, in the hum of the refrigerator, in the ghost of a bark. No one hears anymore. They drive together to the lawyer's office, a strange, quiet pilgrimage. No raised voices, no arguments. Just the rhythm of the tires and the distant sound of birds returning after the storm. Harold greets them with that same professional sympathy, but even he feels the shift. Grief has lost its sharpness here. He explains the clause they'd missed, the one about the foundation, the property, the trust, the ashes, all meant to form a small rescue shelter. Benny's legacy wasn't ownership, it was protection. Their father had intended them to keep giving, not hoarding. It hits Lena first, then Evelyn, and finally Charles, whose silence collapses under the weight of it. The will wasn't punishment. It was an apology disguised as instruction. No, the drive back feels different. The air in the car is intense now. It's hollow, like space waiting to be filled. They talk about practical things for the first time in years. Permits, repairs, what kind of shelter it could be. Evelyn surprises them both when she says she still remembers how Benny used to wait by the gate every morning, tail wagging, like he expected forgiveness to walk up the driveway. Charles nods but says nothing. He's staring out the window, jaw working, trying to swallow 30 years of pride. Lena grips the steering wheel tighter, a quiet smile flickering for the first time. For once, it feels like they're driving towards something instead of away. The garden looks smaller than Lena remembers, but maybe that's what time does to grief. Together, they mark out where the shelter might stand, near the old apple tree where Benny rests. The soil is softer now, easier to turn. Charles bends down to touch the ground, his hand trembling not from age but from remorse. Evelyn watches, lips pressed together, the wind tugging at her shawl. When Lena kneels beside them, no one tells her not to. The three of them work in silence, fingers sinking into earth that smells of rain and beginnings. For the first time in years, their movements sync. Unspoken rhythm, shared purpose. Somewhere in the trees, a dog barks, distant but real enough to make them pause. Dusk settles like a closing statement. The three of them sit on the porch steps, too tired to speak, but unwilling to go inside. The foundation lines are marked. Tomorrow they'll start the real work. In the silence, Evelyn reaches for her daughter's hand, tentative but steady. Charles leans forward, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on the tree. For a long time, there's nothing but the sound of wind and the creak of old wood beneath them. Then Lena says softly, "He just wanted us to keep loving something." Evelyn nods, eyes glistening. Charles exhales, long and low, a sound halfway between grief and peace. The night folds around them, gentle and forgiving. Somewhere beyond the porch light, a golden shape seems to linger, not haunting, but watching. The first hammer strike sounds like absolution. The shelter is taking shape, frame by frame, heartbeat by heartbeat. Lena works beside her father, the air between them thick with sawdust and unspoken history. They don't talk much. Their silence now feels like cooperation, not punishment. Evelyn moves between them with coffee and quiet instructions, her voice steady, as though she's been waiting years for purpose to find her again. The ground where Benny rests lies just beyond the construction line, untouched, sacred. The smell of pine and damp earth fills the air. For once, they are building instead of breaking. In the rhythm of labor, forgiveness begins to sound like something tangible, not a word, but a weight shifting inside them, subtle and slow. By midday, the rhythm falters. Charles' back gives out, and he insists on continuing anyway. Pride's final defense. Lena takes the hammer from him gently, her tone firm but kind. He lets her, which feels like a quiet surrender. Evelyn watches from the porch, remembering the man who once barked orders instead of sharing effort. Now he's smaller, human in a way she almost forgot to love. The wind carries the smell of rain, but no one rushes to stop. Let it come, Evelyn thinks. Let it wash the last of their stubbornness away. The rain comes in sheets, hammering against tarps and tin. They take shelter inside the half-finished frame, laughter echoing unexpectedly. Evelyn spreads a blanket across the mud. Charles jokes weakly about the leaky roof. Lena pours coffee from a thermos that tastes faintly of iron and nostalgia. For the first time in years, they sound like a family. Not perfect, not fixed, but real. As thunder rolls, Lena finds herself tracing the edge of Benny's collar in her pocket. The storm outside feels less like punishment now, more like baptism. They sit in the half-light, three silhouettes framed by the unfinished walls, waiting for the sky to pass judgment, and finding it merciful. When the rain finally stops, the world smells of soil and forgiveness. The shelter stands half-complete, but its outline feels whole. Evelyn walks to the tree where Benny lies and kneels, fingers brushing the plaque as though greeting an old friend. She whispers something, too soft for Lena to hear, then rises and hands her daughter the keys to the house. "It's yours now," she says. Lena freezes, the gesture too large to fit in her chest. "We'll stay nearby," Evelyn adds, almost smiling. "Help when you need." For once, the handoff feels peaceful. No one wins, no one loses, only continuation. The quiet mercy of starting over. Night arrives quietly, the kind that hums with peace rather than tension. The new lights in the shelter flicker on. The first illumination of something born from love rather than control. Lena stands inside, surrounded by the echo of hammer strikes and memory. Her parents join her at the doorway. "He'd have liked this," Charles says, and for once the words carry no bitterness. Evelyn nods, tears slipping silently down her cheek. Outside, a breeze stirs the apple leaves, and for a brief second, a low bark drifts through the night, not imagined, not haunting, but familiar. They all turn toward it, smiling through the ache. Love, it seems, doesn't vanish. It just changes its form. The day of the opening dawns pale and windless. The shelter stands clean and bright, its wooden frame varnished, its sign freshly hung. Benny's Haven, the lettering reads, simple, honest, hand-painted by Lena herself. Reporters from the local paper arrive, polite but curious, their questions threaded with the small-town need for gossip. Evelyn fusses with the coffee urn, hiding her nerves in efficiency. Charles walks the perimeter like a man checking fences, pretending not to be proud. Lena moves between them both, clipboard in hand, heart pulsing with the quiet terror of beginnings. A van pulls up. The first rescue dog, a lean shepherd mix with anxious eyes. The moment it steps out, tail low but curious, the air changes. Purpose hums through the space, grounding them all. The first visitors come in waves. Volunteers, donors, neighbors, curious to see whether the Mercer's miracle will hold. Some whisper about the will, others about the years of silence that came before it. Lena greets each person with a practiced calm, though every handshake feels like a test. Evelyn finds herself explaining the mission. "It's not just about animals," she says softly. "It's about second chances." Charles stands beside the kennels, showing a young volunteer how to secure a latch. His voice, once sharp, carries patience now. The air smells of sawdust and wet fur. A dog barks somewhere behind them, bright and echoing. It sounds like laughter, finally remembering how to exist here. Midday brings tension disguised as conversation. A reporter asks the wrong question. Something about inheritance, about guilt. The word lands like a dropped tool. For a heartbeat, everyone freezes. Lena steadies herself before answering. The inheritance was love, just written differently. Evelyn watches her daughter with quiet pride, eyes glistening. Charles clears his throat, shifting awkwardly but staying silent. The crowd softens. The reporter looks embarrassed, scribbling anyway. When the next dog barks, the tension breaks, replaced by laughter. The day carries on. But somewhere deep inside, Lena knows the old wounds are only sleeping. The difference now is that they're finally healing in the open air. Evening settles slowly, wrapping the shelter in amber light. The visitors are gone. The kennels hum with quiet breathing. Lena closes the ledger, exhaustion settling into her bones. Evelyn sits beside her, holding a cup of tea gone cold. Charles approaches from outside, wiping his hands with a rag, looking content in a way she's never seen. "You did good," he says simply. Lena laughs. Short, surprised, disbelieving. Her mother smiles too, though tears streak her cheeks. They sit together in the fading light, the hum of gentle snores from sleeping dogs filling the air. It feels almost holy, not redemption but something sturdier. Peace built plank by plank, word by word, hand by hand. Night falls quiet and full. The lights in the shelter flicker off one by one until only the porch remains lit. Lena locks the front gate, turning to look at what they've built. A place that breathes, that shelters, that remembers. Her parents stand beside her, close but unintrusive. From the far kennel, a soft whine rises. The shepherd mix, dreaming, Charles puts a hand on Lena's shoulder. Evelyn threads her arm through his. The three of them stand in silence, their shadows blending under the lamplight. Somewhere above, stars prick through the dark. The house behind them waits, warm and still. The past doesn't vanish, it settles, finally, into belonging. A full year has passed, though the house looks older than that. The kind of aging that comes from peace finally taking root. The shelter hums quietly beyond the window, a patchwork of sound and warmth. There's laughter now where shouting used to live, and yet mornings still begin with that same hush, as if the world pauses to remember. Lena wakes early, brewing coffee before the volunteers arrive. The smell reminds her of that first stormy morning when the will felt like a verdict instead of a beginning. Her parents join her without words, their movements easy, familiar. Sometimes healing doesn't announce itself. It just changes the rhythm of breathing. The anniversary event draws more people than expected. Children run between kennels, laughter spilling over the scent of hay and soap. A banner flaps gently. 1 year of Haven. Evelyn coordinates the bake sale table. Charles gives an interview, awkward but sincere. Lena moves through the crowd like a conductor, greeting faces both new and familiar. A woman approaches with an old photograph, her late husband, smiling beside a golden retriever. "I think this was your Benny," she says softly. "The picture is dated 2 decades ago." Lena stares at it, heart trembling, recognizing the same gentle eyes. For the first time, she understands the weight her father carried, the unspoken promise he kept. Later, after the guests leave, Lena sits alone in the office, the photograph laid beside the urn. The resemblance is unmistakable. Benny is a young dog, before their lives collided. She thinks of the strangers who loved him first, and of the chain of kindness that somehow found its way to her. Evelyn appears in the doorway, holding 2 cups of tea. "He was meant to find us," she says quietly, setting one down. Lena nods, eyes on the picture. "Maybe we were meant to find each other," she replies. The words hang in the air, soft and certain. For the first time, memory feels like a bridge, not a wound. Charles lingers by the apple tree as evening deepens, hands in his pockets. The bark has thickened, its roots settled deep, unbothered by years of storms. He kneels beside the plaque and whispers something no one else can hear. Maybe apology, maybe gratitude. The wind carries the scent of apples beginning to ripen. When Evelyn and Lena join him, he doesn't rise right away. "He taught us how to stay," he says finally. His voice doesn't shake. Evelyn takes his hand. Lena places hers over both. The last light of day filters through the branches, soft and forgiving. Night falls clear, the kind that lets the stars breathe. The shelter lights glow across the field, golden squares of warmth against the dark. Lena stands at the porch, watching her parents lock up the kennels. A soft bark echoes one of the rescues stirring in sleep. She smiles, closing her eyes. Benny is everywhere now, in the laughter of volunteers, the creak of porch wood, the scent of rain-soaked soil. His legacy isn't in ashes or land deeds. It's in every life saved by what they built together. As she turns toward the house, the wind rustles the apple leaves. It sounds like gratitude.